Greetings, Rays community. Brent coming in live from Four Oaks, North Carolina. As my family and I continue our journey around the country, I found out that Four Oaks has a population of 1,921 as of the 2010 census. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because it had a pretty good service zone, and I'm on the move today. And I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome my friend and our guest, Caroline Chang, who serves as the Vice President of Community and Product Engagement at UC Innovation, and also President and co-founder of the Catz Meow Transport Service. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you. I'm surprised you remembered about the nonprofit. We're on hold right now because of COVID, but so we have not been transporting any cats.
Your cat smuggling side hustle is something we're definitely going to talk about, but we also have lots more to cover. And I have known you for some time. When I think about people that have really played an important role on our entrepreneurial journey at Evertrue, you're right there at the top of the list. And at the same time, what I've learned in doing these podcasts is that I've inevitably learned new things, even about people that I've known for a long time. And one of the ways that I've been introducing our recent guests is by asking them to start by thinking back to their own college journey and to go back in time to the person who was a junior in high school, to that Caroline, who was starting to think about what your higher ed experience might be. Who was she? What was she into? Was she into cats and knitting back then, or was it a different person? And how did you end up going to Stanford University?
So I am the youngest of four of a Chinese American family, and if you know anything about Asian American families, education is incredibly important. It was never discussed whether I would go to college, but where I would go to college. And in my family, it was also that it had to be one of the top, quote unquote, top-notch universities. So junior year, thinking about where I should go, it was a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But, I oddly enough, we had just moved 3 years prior from Connecticut, where I, spent 11 years, to California right before I started high school. And I remember going over the list of schools with my mom. And I said to her, I really want to apply to Princeton to see if I can get in, because I, liked what Princeton had to offer. And she goes, you're not going to go even if you get in, so don't bother spending the $50. It was only $50 back then too. But to us, $50 was a lot of money. So she said, nope, you're not even going to go. So, pretty much kept it west of the Mississippi, and applied to some schools. At the time, I thought I was going to be a doctor. So I applied to a couple of programs that had a 6-year, BA MD program. And that was, Northwestern and Wazoo St. Louis. Northwestern was appealing because my dad had gotten his law degree there. But my sister was going to Stanford at the time. My sister, she was a junior or senior. And, I visited her a couple of times at Stanford. And so I applied to Stanford. My safety was one of the Cal schools, the UC schools. And then I had another, Pomona was the other school that I picked, a smaller, liberal arts college in California. I wasn't into, my mom had taught me knitting, by the way, but we didn't have any pets growing up. Apparently, when I was little, we had a dog, and the dog, jumped up on me, and I fell down, and my mom got rid of the dog and said, no more pets. My mom didn't really like animals. So it's kind of funny that the rest of us have become a little bit more passionate about it. But so no, not into cats as much, although my sister had 2 cats at the time that I loved having to visit. But the person that, the junior was, someone who was expected to go to college. I was, near the top of my class in high school, just trying to figure out where I wanted to go. When I actually got all of the offers, I remember having a conversation with my sister, and I was always following in her footsteps. Here's my sister is, she's, a physician, she's, had a perfect score on one of her SATs, just, super smart. And I was always, they said, oh, you're, Chris Chang's little sister. And so, I really wanted to go to Stanford, but I remember talking to her and I said, I don't want to follow in your footsteps anymore. And she said, you know what? the number of people that know me at Stanford is just a handful. You're going to make your own way at Stanford. So if you really want to go there, you should go. And my mom and dad, to their credit, Stanford offered the worst financial aid package. They said, you go where you want, we'll make it work. We were squarely lower middle class, earning, we did not, it was just not, money was not, it was a problem, right? But they said, nope, we'll make it work one way or another. And to their credit, they did, right? I mean, I graduated with a bunch of loans, but we made it work. So I did go to Stanford, and my path was very different from my sister's. I was very much into residential education. I was an RA for 2 years. I worked all over campus. I probably at one summer I had 6 jobs on campus, just in various areas. I was a coordinator for new student orientation. I did parents orientation. Those things my sister had no interest in. That was not what she was into. So, and there were a few people who knew her, like there was, someone who was a class behind her at her, co-op, and I, met him. And so I ran into him on campus one day when I was a freshman, but that was it. I mean, nobody knew my sister, and we had different majors. So, that wasn't it either. Maybe we had one French teacher in common. That was about it.
And so you kind of just go all in on the residential experience. You get super involved. Landing a career path in advancement is very different than the joint degree programs you were pursuing when you were applying to college. So when did you realize that maybe the medical path wasn't going to be the right thing for you? And at what point did you even start to understand that this business of fundraising and alumni development was a thing?
So I became a little bit aware of it when I was in school, but I would have said to you, if you interviewed me as a senior at Stanford and had asked me to make a gift, I would have said, no way. I've got $20,000 in loans. There's no way I can make a gift. My first job was $18,000, right? I mean, that was my salary. So I would have said no way, right? And so that's an interesting path. But you asked me about the medical career. So I realized it very early on, freshman year, second quarter, when I did not pass organic chem. And mainly because the second midterm was the day after my birthday, and I didn't study as much as I should have. And I just, it just wasn't for me. It was, at Stanford, it's very cutthroat. And I just, decided no. And I still ended up majoring in something that I probably should have majored in something else, to be honest. But I wanted to avoid sophomore slump. And so I went overseas sophomore year. And so that meant when I got back from overseas, I had to declare right away. And so I just declared something, and I should have taken my time. Anyway. Where'd you go
overseas?
Oh, so I went fall quarter to England and winter quarter to France.
All right. Number one favorite memory in England. Number one favorite memory in France.
Number one favorite memory in England was taking a Shakespeare class from, he became a Guggenheim scholar, where we would read a play, analyze it, go to see the play, read a play, 7 plays. Amazing. Especially the day we took off to go to Stratford-on-Avon and see Richard II and Richard III. Amazing quarter. And I sort of came into my own academically. I sort of figured out that I could do this, but I needed smaller classes. That was the other thing about pre-med, is that all those classes were huge. I needed smaller classes in order to succeed. So, it took me a little while, but I figured that out. France, oh my gosh, my 19th birthday, there were many of us, 6 of us who were overseas, my friends. We all met in Grindelwald, Switzerland to go skiing for my birthday. Just an amazing day. And so, somebody from the England campus came, someone from the Italy campus came, because Stanford has campuses overseas. And then a couple people from the France campus, we all went to, but also the very first day of class, I remember the classes were taught in French. And I remember getting back to my room and thinking, oh my God, my head hurts. Because, at that time I wasn't fluent. And so trying to translate what they were saying into English. And I knew that things were going to be okay when my notes started being in French instead of in English. But don't ask me to speak now.
I was going to say, should we do the next part of the podcast in French?
I can say a few things. I can understand when it's spoken on TV or in a movie. Yeah,
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Well, you have gone on, for those who don't know you, you've gone on to have an incredible career, really building expertise in this advancement services world. It might not have even been called that back then.
Right.
But you've served as the chair of the Case Summer Institute for Advancement Services. You've got a great network of friends. It's obviously a very tight-knit community. When did you realize that that was an opportunity? I don't know what your first job out of college was, but ultimately you had a long career at Stanford, retired, and then have had a great career since. So just tell us about what led you to that role at Stanford and what that world was when you started. What was your real area of focus?
Yeah, so how I got started in advancement is kind of sort of the story for people in my era, which is a little bit, a little bit backwards. It wasn't considered necessarily a career, I would say, but it was still something that's very important today, which is relationships. So I was working at Stanford at the time. I was an executive admin, looking for something else to do with my free time, and Stanford was launching a campaign, and someone I knew said, hey, we're doing a volunteer phone appeal, would you like to come? That's how I got started. So it quickly rose through the volunteer ranks, was the chair of the volunteer appeal. And then someone, who was the director of student and young alumni development at the time, that was a job at Stanford, pulled me aside and said, I'm leaving Stanford. I think you should apply for my job. And I applied for the job, and, I thought, okay, I'll do this for a couple of years and then I'll go get my MBA and then, do something else. And turned out I loved development. Whether it was the combination, it was probably a combination of the leadership. John Ford was an extraordinary leader as a VP. My bosses, my mentors in development were amazing. I loved the work. Was going out and talking to people about giving back to Stanford, right? I mean, and by then I had bought in, right? So I knew the spiel, I knew why it was important to give. I was no longer that senior who said, no way, I was not going to give. And it was just an amazing experience. And, the campaign was great to be involved because there was a lot of excitement and, hoopla and everything else. And I just continued on. So I had a couple roles in the annual fund, was then moved over to the medical center. I was director of annual giving for a couple of years. And we were in the middle of converting the old database, which was on a IBM mainframe, to Ellucian Advance. And fancy new client server technology. I was a
which was not even Ellucian at that time, right?
It was BSR Advance, Business Systems Resources. I don't even remember the name because we had a different name for it, which I can't say in public. So
this is a safe place, but keep going.
So I was a pilot tester, and I just really, really, was fascinated by this. I was, really engaged. And
like on a personal level, were you into technology at that time, or?
I've always been a little bit of a nerd. I mean,
okay,
not necessarily going out and buying the newest thing, but fascinated by new technology. Not afraid of it by any means. I think that's, I was fascinated by how this could all make it work. Like, even on the old mainframe, I was asking the programmers, so how do you do a search for X, Y, and Z? And so I was writing my own reports out of, that terrible language that we were using. And they were saying, Carolyn's really learning fast. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a nerd. I think that's part of why I was attracted to this area. But my boss at the time at the medical center was moving over to become director of operations, and she had posted a position as, associate director. And part of it was helping to move the organization forward in adopting the new technology. But the other part of the job was managing a large group of people, and that is the advancement services area, right? So it was gift processing, biorecords, and at the time it was called central files. And, looking back at what was available at Stanford, it's a large shop. At the time it was, 300 or 400 people. I knew if I wanted to manage a large group of people, I'd probably have to either manage something like the annual fund or go into major gifts and then manage a region. And I was not interested in major gifts. And I wasn't sure I wanted to continue to to go and manage a large group of annual fund fundraisers. And so this opportunity to manage the advancement services team was, something I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. I think I would be a good manager. And so I did that, and I loved gift processing. It was it sort of suits my need for making things work, but I could also think outside the box because Stanford had a lot of complicated gifts. And so trying to figure out, okay, with a lot of times with the programmers, okay, so I have this crazy gift, what happens if I do this? What happens to the, feed to the GL? Can we alter the program, the advanced in order to take this? I remember one time going into the programmer and saying, we have, a gift with benefit, right? So in quid pro quo, but the benefit is $360,000, and I need you to expand the field because, most.
What does that mean? What do you mean the benefit?
What the benefit received for making this gift. So it was a corporate program for the medical center, and so every company, Apple, whatever, made a $3 million gift, and the benefit received was $360,000. But the actual field was not big enough because usually gifts in kinds are, a hat for $20 or whatever, right? And so I had to, run in there. I said, I've got to post these, 4 gifts of $3 million each, and I can't get the field to work. So anyway, so it's just things like that suited me. And it oddly gave me access to the vice president that most people probably didn't have at Stanford. There was a joke at that time, it was Martin Shell. There was a joke going around that when I called, Martin would answer, but not everyone. And it's usually because he knew that I was only calling when I had a problem that I needed his advice on, right? That I needed some clarification or something. And he knew that I wasn't going to call him about something, superfluous. It was something that had to do with a gift that we have to post or a pledge.
Did you have like a special line? Was there
like
a bat phone to Martin Shell that would get you direct?
No, but I still have the phone number of the Development Legal Counsel's number memorized.
Love it.
Kind of crazy. Anyway, so and the other part that I really liked about Advanced Services is that primarily my clients were internal. So I got to know the staff really well. I participated in a, development 101 session, and where I introduced what advancement services was and how it operated at Stanford to new staff. And that was often one of my first clues about, who was going to be good or who might be a problem or, things like that. And so I really like servicing the internal clients. I mean, not to say I didn't have people who called donors who called me. I had a few that called me on a regular basis, but it was just very different than being a fundraiser. It was getting to know the internal clients was great. So that's how I ended up getting to know as much about advancement services as I did.
Yeah. And so when you think about over those years, I mean, it's your alma mater, you're unbelievably passionate about it. I mean, for somebody who, you studied there, you worked there, and then after work, you'd go to whatever game was going on. I don't know how many season tickets you hold. Like, how much time were you not at Stanford? Like, it's just, I feel like some people are like, I got to leave. I'm going to go home. I'm going to unplug for the weekend. You're like, I'm going to go home for a minute, and I'm going back to Stanford. And like, was that always your MO, or did that evolve as you got more and more connected with the campus?
I think it probably evolved as I got more and more connected. I mean, football was an easy one to get season tickets for. And then, basketball followed shortly thereafter. But so I got to know athletics a little bit more. So it's interesting. When I worked my first job at Stanford after I graduated, and so it wasn't my very first job out of school, I worked in the undergraduate advising center. And one of the things was that they would bring by potential athletes, elite athletes, to come meet the advisors to talk about their academic career, right? And so I would meet them, and I then became an advisor, and so I had a lot of athletes. I just got started getting connected with the athletic department. So I started going to, signing up for a lot of sports. So the answer is 5, by the way. And it would have been more, but they made tennis non-ticketed. So, and we would definitely sign up for soccer, but it conflicts with women's volleyball. So anyway, I spent a lot of time on campus. I mean, I love the campus. I love the people, and sports I go to a lot of sports, Brent, as a release because, especially in a basketball game, well, football game too, you can scream and yell like a banshee and no one says anything about it. In fact, the louder you are, the better it is for the team.
I love
except for the time I got kicked out of a game.
So, well, now I have to ask more I will confess I was once kicked out of a game, but it was really for just excess passion, is what I would describe it as.
Ditto.
Fair
Although
enough.
I might have dropped an F-bomb at the ref.
All right. I have to ask you then, when you think about all those years at Stanford, obviously it's an amazing community at the forefront of leadership in so many sectors. And, you know, when you're working in the development space, you're meeting a lot of those folks in different capacities. What were some of the experiences that, you know, just like the 19th birthday party when you were studying in France, like what are the equivalents during your time at Stanford when you really just felt like, wow, this is, I mean, you know, the whole thing is special, but this moment is really, really standing out.
You mean as a staff person, as a development person?
Yeah, just sort of in the development realm, when you think about experiences or events you were a part of, people who you got to meet, or just moments that you were sort of really struck by the experience.
I talk about this moment actually a lot to new staff at UC Innovation. I will always remember this. So back in 1997, John Ford called an all hands meeting, which was very unusual. The all hands meeting were plotted out a year in advance. They always happened 2 weeks after the board meeting, you know, was sort of pro forma. And so for him to call an all hands meeting for that afternoon was just very unusual. And we thought, okay, who died? Who's resigning? You know, that kind of level of anxiety that actually came up. And he brought everyone together to announce the largest gift that the Hewlett Foundation had ever made. It was $400 million, and it was to Stanford. And what I remember him saying, you know, to this day, I can hear him saying it, that this gift was the result of a long relationship that Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard had with the university, which started when they were students. And then he proceeded to name off some of the more recent, fundraisers who worked with them. One of which was their fundraiser for 20 years, Daryl Pearson, whose son then became development legal counsel. I mean, it just proved to me that it was not only relationships, but the length of the relationships that Stanford had that allowed them to be so successful in the fundraising realm. And so it pains me to hear when you know there's rapid turnover of development staff, especially on the major gift level, because to me that, yeah, you might be, as a fundraiser, you might be going to chase the dollar or a better experience, but it's not helping the institution. And the institution needs to do a better job of selling the job itself to keep those relationships going. So to keep staff. So staff retention, I don't think development offices think about staff retention as an important thing, and they need to, because, you know, the relationships really do matter. Now, it's not to say Stanford doesn't have its share of turnover, but at the very highest level, you know, those $400 million gifts, you know, that was, you know, to me, I always remember that it was the result of the relationship that those students had with, you know, David and Bill had with Stanford, but Stanford had with them as well. That to me was one of the moments
I love that.
Forget.
I love that. What an all hands.
What an all hands was right. And then that's what happened. Caroline had to process that pledge, which part was challenged. Never mind. Anyway, it was interesting.
A lot of zeros that had to fit in the.
That one fits, for oddly enough.
Yeah. So, and then you retired.
I did. Why?
I don't know. I mean, if you want to talk about it, you can. But you retired, but you know.
Didn't.
In name only. Yeah.
So, you know, it was a long time working for the same institution. You know, there were some changes happening that I could see. I think maybe I just thought I had been thinking for a little while. I mean, I knew exactly when I could retire at Stanford. It was a combination of age and years of service. And so then a former colleague of mine said, listen, who was working at Santa Clara, we've done a reorganization in anticipation of a campaign. We have a new vice president. There's a job open as, you know, for AVP of Advancement Services. Would you be interested? And it just so happened to be, you know, good timing that I was sort of thinking about, okay, if something came along that was a good move, then I could retire and go. And so I didn't have to move across country or anything. It was in my backyard, sort of a little bit longer commute than Stanford. And smaller shop, which I had never experienced. It was an alma mater also, because I got my MBA from Santa Clara. So that also helped. And so I took a chance and that's what I did. Smaller shop, I had a larger portfolio. So instead of just, gift processing and records and files, I had prospect management, I had donor relations, and then to throw in other things, I had facilities, budget, and HR. So just a little bit of everything, basically all the support services for university relations for the development office. And that's actually when you and I met, right?
That is when you and I met, which is still one of my most poignant memories on this entire journey. Caroline approached me at a vendor booth in where were
Nashville.
we? DC?
Nashville.
Here in Nashville. It was the Blackbaud annual conference, BBCon, and I was standing there in my booth with my colored pants and our brochures, and Carolyn walked up to me, and it was one of the most assertive vendor booth conversations I ever had. She said something along the lines of, "So what do you do?" Not hi, not hello, not will you give me a check mark on my vendor bingo card, vendor bingo. It was, what do you do? And I don't remember what I said, but she listened to me, she listened to my spiel, and abruptly walked away. And then she came back.
No, I think I texted you.
Yeah, right. Asked for the mobile number, texted me, and then we got back together along with her colleague Julie, right?
Yep.
And we just started talking about our world and the point of view that we thought there was a really big disconnect at that time between traditional database systems and the digital web. And I think it's all starting to make sense to me now, as you described, even your interest in BSR Advance and learning to program back then, that you were very active and engaged on various social media platforms. And this was in probably 2014, 2015. So relatively early in our journey at Evertrue. And I don't think you were walking the floor that day really looking to buy new products, but there was something about our conversation that did, spark your interest. And obviously you went on to, become a great friend, and just you've provided us countless hours of feedback over the years. You've helped us with Blackbaud, Salesforce, Advance. I mean, you're one of the few people that really has experience with all of those kind of main platforms. But when you think back, that's my version of the story. And then I think there was a night out in Nashville, and you got to hang with some mutual friends there. But I will give you credit. Think back to?
We're going to give credit to where credit's due. So Chris Cannon, and I've known Chris for years, actually mentioned, he said, you should check out these Evertrue people at BBCon. And so when Julie and I walked by, we were walking the floor getting our little bingo cards done. We walked by, and so we walked back. I don't know if you knew that. We walked by, smiled, whatever, and then we walked back because I said, you know what? Chris Cannon said that we should check these guys out. And that's why I was also sort of maybe super aggressive, because it's like, I don't care about all this fluff. I want to know what you do, because you've been recommended by someone I trust. So what is it that you do? So that's how we got started. And I remember so we left abruptly because we wanted to go to a session. So Julie and I are sitting in this session, and I'm thinking about what you said and what you started to say. And we had already purchased something else, a little bit different. It had to do more with gamification. Yeah. So I turned to Julie and I said, why couldn't we get both? And she goes, we should. It does different things. And I went, okay. And that's when I texted you to say, okay, we want a more in-depth demo. And that's what you did. And so 45 minutes later, you're sitting there with us, giving us a better demo. That's my version. And then there was a late night in Nashville where I might have lost my sweater and introduced somebody to shops.
And we've gone on. That was an opportunity where we did get to partner at Santa Clara. And I think you were really an early believer in the idea that if you can connect digital engagement signals and infer interest by way of social media, which was a real core area of focus at that time, but also connected to all that rich data that does live in these traditional systems that you've worked hard to engineer to make sure you can fit the right number of zeros and so forth, that there'd be an opportunity. And we were the product was very early at that time, but
But
it
still
was
provided
really
such,
validating.
yeah,
Yeah,
still such amazing information, especially for our research folks, in
right.
areas that we would never have any visibility in. I mean, I think that was the value there, and then overlaying that with just a better UI. I've always been a fan of your UI.
Yeah. And ultimately we learned a lot during those years, but you've had new opportunities that have emerged. You had challenges that you went through, obviously personally as well, but kind of as you reflect on making this recent most recent career move, and as you think about what got you excited, you do have a lot of experience with the different platforms, and I don't want to go too in depth in any of that, but when did you sort of first get exposed to UC innovation, and was it sort of an immediate connection, or was it a more drawn out kind of process, if you will?
So once it happened, it was fast, but what you all will notice is that I have not been terribly intentional about my career. I've taken opportunities when they've come across. So actually, one of my mentors used to say, take your cookies when they're passed. And so the Santa Clara thing was a cookie for me, right? It was an opportunity to work closer with the president and the board, and bigger portfolio. But what you referenced was I actually was diagnosed with breast cancer as we were doing our conversion from Razor's Edge to Blackbaud CRM. And shortly after we went live, I just decided I needed to take some time off. So I left Santa Clara, took 6 months off. I would recommend that for anyone, just like you're recommending the RV life for anyone. I would recommend, if you need it, to take some self-care and take some time off. It was the best thing I ever did. And then I happened to sign on with a small management consulting firm, a boutique management consulting firm out of Chicago. And in the course of one of those engagements, in which I was reviewing the current CRM landscape for NYU, I met Christine and Ken, the co-founders of UC Innovation, and George, the CEO. And I had to, one of my tasks for this engagement was to actually see what the products were, and compare them. And asked them a lot of questions, and it was like, oh, that's Salesforce thingy. Of course, I'd heard about Salesforce because by then Stanford, USC, and UCSF had signed with Salesforce to change their CRM systems, and I was hearing various levels of success or not at those institutions. But I got to know Christine, Ken, and George. And liked them very much, liked their energy. Christine especially is passionate about Salesforce, so that was attractive to me. But I was doing my report, and George happened to email me and say, "Hey, can you spend a few minutes and talk about XYZ person who I had worked with at Stanford and hired at Santa Clara?" Anyway, and I said, "Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about this person, but why aren't you? If you have openings, why aren't you talking to me?" Because I had made a decision to leave. This is where it was intentional, to leave the consulting firm, and I was just looking for other opportunities. And I thought I had told everyone in the world that I was looking for another job. And George said, "Wait a minute, you're looking for a job?" And I said, "Yes." So about a week or two later, we met up at Dreamforce. I spent a couple hours. I thought I was giving them advice on the portal that they were developing, and hoping to sell as part of the product. So I did give them some advice, but then it had turned into like an hour-long sell by them to me. And the next day I had an offer in my inbox. And so I, took my time deciding, because I had an offer from another place. And I said to my husband, "I think I'm going to take a chance on this startup. It feels right, that the passion's there, the people are great. It'd be interesting to work for a woman-owned firm, especially one of where the Christine and Ken are Asian American. I just thought I can continue to work remotely, which I discovered I really liked. So I decided to take that job."
Anytime people ask me about joining early stage companies, including Evertrue, early on in our endeavor, and even now, it is. I often say it's you should think about it the same way a venture capitalist would. because unlike the venture capitalist who is investing their money, which by the way isn't even theirs, it's through other investors,
Yeah.
right? You're investing your time, you're investing your life, but for any sort of still, not totally proven established company, you've got to have the same or even a higher degree, I think, of judgment than the venture capitalist. And so when you think about your decision, you knew the Blackbaud community really well, right? You knew the Ellucian community really well. Salesforce, for all of its might and strength in the broader commercial sector, was sort of the new kid on the block or the underdog in higher ed. And so that didn't phase you. And I'm just curious, without getting, too in the weeds, when you looked at the landscape a few years ago, when you were making your decision, or as you did work with TSI to map out CRM market opportunities and gaps for NYU, for example, what was like the high level view of what you saw at that time that made you feel like there was a real opportunity here?
Yeah, so I will say I saw an early version of the product maybe in 2017, sometime in 2017. But by the time I saw it again for NYU in 2018, they had made leaps and bounds. Like the first time I saw it, I thought, oh, this is terrible. This is something clearly built just for USC. This is so USC focused. This is not going to work. This is not going to be successful. But in the course of the following year, when UC Innovation took the time to productize it, to move the product, to make the product into Lightning, they made some moves. Now I know what they did. But by the time I saw it in 2018, I thought, oh my God, this is completely different, and they get it. And they understand. I mean, they were talking about advancement in the way that proved to me that they understood advancement. Even though they didn't have any experience before they started working on the USC project, they learned quickly. And so I thought, okay, these are smart people who can merge, the needs of advancement with the technology of Salesforce, and in a way that makes it presentable for those of us who are looking for new different technology. So to me, there was the passion and the commitment to making the product really what would be useful for advancement, regardless of the platform, right? I mean, and it turns out, obviously, or maybe not so obviously, but there's a lot of, we can take advantage of a lot of things that Salesforce, the might and strength of Salesforce has to, for our product itself, because we're based on that platform. But it was really their commitment to the actual Ascend product, and how the changes that they made, and the understanding they had that what they had works fine for one school, but if they wanted to sell it, they needed to make things a little bit more generic. They needed to address some things, and they started to do that. And actually, what I do now is to take that even a step further, right? Is to make sure that we can cover, X number of cases, and how to make it more out of the box, and all those kinds of things are things that we're looking for. But anyway, to me, it was that whole revelation of that, I don't know, 9 months difference that said to me, this is something worth taking a chance on, even though I wouldn't have, 4 years ago, I wouldn't have said that Salesforce, really? Salesforce and advancement? Salesforce? So.
Love it. And I guess maybe one question I would have for you is, I feel like part of the opportunity historically, at least, has been, or one of the challenges I think that everybody would agree in the technology landscape, is that higher ed has oftentimes felt compelled to go with a one size fits all solution, or a all-in-one solution, right, where we'll pick one vendor. It will do all of these things. It might not do all of those things really well, but we can check all the boxes. And that's just sort of been one of the dynamics. I think it's fair to say over the last 5 years in particular, maybe even a little bit longer, I'd like to think we were part of it, that there really has been some unbundling of the traditional systems, right? Instead of trying to do everything, let's weave together best-in-class components, and ideally on top of and well integrated with whatever the system of record may be. But I still feel this tension around, we were even catching up with a Salesforce advancement customer today, and they were saying, we're really struggling with how much of this should be our one-stop shop. And when I think about even Evertrue's implementation of Salesforce, part of the reason we like it is because we've been able to integrate so many other software systems with Salesforce. But I do sort of feel this tension even in higher ed, where is Salesforce supposed to be a one-stop? Is it the next one-stop shop? Or is it really about the ecosystem? Because depending on who you talk to, there can be different interpretations.
So I don't want to speak for Salesforce, but I do know that for our company, while we think that we have the most comprehensive advancement solution, we tell every client, but if you find something that works better, we can integrate. Because it, especially if it has, that product has a Salesforce API, it is much easier. I wouldn't say that it's plug and play, but it's much easier to integrate another product. So, you know, events is a perfect example. There are, I don't know, a lot of different event programs out there. And so if, you know, you could use Eventbrite one year, and if you say, no, you know, it's not really working for us, we want to use Cvent instead, nope, not a problem for us to unhook that and to hook it back in, you know, hook it in with Cvent and still be able to use, you know, Ascend as the base, as the CRM. So, and it's also true in our own development, right? I mean, a lot of things we talk about is, should we be building something, or should we just, you know, partner with those who do it better? And so we've made a few decisions like that, where no, this isn't something that we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and we'll partner with those, you know, those companies that do something better rather than us doing it, and so that we can concentrate on what we can do well. So you know, I think that is the beauty behind Salesforce, and we believe it in our company, and that's what we do sell. Now, you know, would we prefer that you use ours for everything? Yes, but we can see that people don't. But it also allows for us to have some interesting implementations where a school will say, okay, we're gonna sign with you to do gift processing, but we're going to continue to use our old system for project management. And then, you know, then they leave it open that they would sign on with project management, but it is a definite second phase, right? Or, you know, a future phase of the project. So it does allow for those kinds of things, because Salesforce is more flexible than, I would say, some of the older competitors.
Fair enough. You all have had some great momentum. I know that you're able to share publicly some of your recent, I don't know, go lives or recently signed partnerships, but who are some of the institutions you're excited about working with right now?
So our latest signing is Johns Hopkins University, and that'll allow us to not only build out but showcase our grateful patient ability to help them solicit grateful patients. We've had it all along with USC, but we're, you know, it's a great opportunity for us because obviously grateful patients for them is a huge part of their business. So we are thrilled to be working with them. But you know, on the other side, we signed with Ivy Tech, which is a community college system in Indiana, the largest one in Indiana, and you know, so that's a, you know, completely different set of challenges, but thrilled to be working with them. And then Brandeis, you know, liberal arts in the Northeast, so, and that, you know, implementation they have structured it in a different way, and so it'll be interesting there. Go lives, we had 2 in January. But we are rapidly working towards one that's due to be in May. I'm not going to jinx it by saying which school, but we have a go live in May that we are all working towards. And so, yeah, got some pretty good momentum. There was a notice of award of another one that we can't make public yet, but you know, that was good, and hopefully it'll continue. I think
Exciting.
I'm going to say I think I might have. The chance I took might have been okay.
Makes me happy. You earned it. And can I just ask, I mean, it is an incredibly tight-knit community. You've been very involved with CASE. You've been involved. I mean, we've definitely had some great experiences at AASP conferences and so forth. Who are some of the people that you really count as friends and mentors, either in the advancement services community specifically or the advancement community more broadly?
Oh, that's a good question. So the group of people that I became very close to while I was leading SciS, we have a group chat together. And so that's Jason Bowley, Carrie White, Kushal Dasgupta, Mark Lanham, Mary Carol Stark, Jen Shimp Bowerman. And, those people I rely on pretty heavily. I also, and then Tom Chaves was one who brought me in. And so, occasionally with Tom. I talk a lot with Carl Otto at UC Berkeley. It's kind of funny. I call him conference husband. He calls me conference wife. It turns out that we present really well together. And we have very, very different styles, but for some reason we mesh. And so that's when we started calling each other that. So I talked to him quite a bit about, things going on. And it's a little bit, not tension, but it's kind of funny because of course we would love for Cal to sign on with UC Innovation, because especially given that they have Salesforce already, but they're not ready yet. They're going to finish their campaign first. Who else? Shelby Radcliffe at Willamette. I actually, reach out to personally a lot of, for personal kinds of things, career things. Sandra Camparo also, she was one of my staff people.
It's a great group. Mike Riopel,
Yeah, so Mike and I, when we're together in person, we chat all the time. But I have to say, I don't have his cell phone number. If I have your cell phone number, watch out.
Watch out.
As you should know.
I learned that. Absolutely. Okay, well, I want to be sensitive of time. Tell me about the Catz Meow.
Oh, so yeah, it's a all volunteer cat transport organization. We transport cats across the country using a leg-to-leg transport. So a lot of this happens with dogs and other animals too, but we concentrate only on cats. So every volunteer drives an hour and a half, and they hand off the cat to another person, and we get to transport the cats all over the place. Sometimes I fly them, right, because I was flying. I fly a lot, or I used to. Hope to again soon. So I will fly the cat as well. But it's, people fall in love with cats all over the place, or, there's a family situation where someone passes on and needs to get the, cat to a relative. That's why people say, why don't you just adopt locally? Sometimes, you want a particular kind of cat and you fall in love with them. And so, as long as the adopting out organization is comfortable adopting out of state or, far away, then we're happy to transport, and it's free.
Do you have any particularly memorable or emotional experiences in that work that stand out?
Yeah. So there was one where, so it blends my sports too. At the time, it was not my organization. I was volunteering for another organization that did the same thing. But I was in Tempe, Arizona for the Pac-12 championship game, football. And the transport that was going up the state of California had to be stopped the day before because it snowed on I-5. And so I got a call from the coordinator and said, hey, I see that you're in Tempe. Could you transport these cats to, and keep them at your place until we can restart the transport? They were going up to Oregon, Oregon or Montana. I don't remember now. Can you basically do this? I went, okay. So, we were planning to do a 14-hour drive on Sunday to begin with to get home from the championship. And so, there were 3 of us in the car. So we had to rearrange the car to get this huge crate of 3 kittens in the car. And I ended up having them for 2 weeks. And when I had to hand off the cats to the next driver 2 weekends away, I cried for 30 minutes driving back because I had just gotten so attached to them, which is why I don't foster, by the way. I totally believe in fostering, but I would be a foster fail every time because I
love it. How many cats do you think you've been a part of transporting?
Personally?
Yeah.
50, 75.
Wow. All right.
Our organization has done in the 4 years, and remember, we've been off a year. We transport over 250.
Love it.
Sometimes it's multiple, so those are easier. Like 3 kittens.
You are a jack of many trades. I also just have to comment for those who've been listening along my RV journey. When you pack up a family of 5 into an RV for 10 months at 11,000 miles, you've got to be pretty judicious about what you pack, and you get a very small set of everything. And one of the things that made the cut was the unbelievable blanket that Carolyn knitted for our baby Odin when he was born. And that thing is a hot commodity in the RV. Everybody wants that blanket. So
I'm glad.
you are talented and generous on many fronts. And it has been really fun catching up with you today. I guess when you think about what you're excited about coming, hopefully, out of COVID here and, into this new reality in mid 2021, what are you most excited about professionally, personally? What's on your 2021 bucket list?
To give everyone I love a hug.
Well said.
That's probably, I'm a hugger to begin with. So to not be able to do that has been really, really hard. I'm excited for in-person conferences. I don't think it will happen this year. I think it will start next year. I think that'll be, great. Just reconnecting. I mean, the connections that you make at a conference, as you know, are sometimes, life altering.
I think it's fair to say it would have been really hard to engineer us meeting via Zoom.
Yeah, that whole experience, right? I mean, my ability to walk away from your first pitch and it would have been completely different. So I totally miss that, and just the after hours activities. That to me, that's where I get to know a lot of people and meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to getting back to watching sports in person.
Yeah.
I might be going to a hockey game next week, so we'll see. It'll be, the Sharks are doing terribly, but still it's hockey. And Patrick Marleau, it might be his last game, so who knows?
Carolyn,
I know all sports.
If people want to stay in touch with you, I know you're active on LinkedIn. Is that the best way, or Twitter, or what's your preferred medium?
Either way, Twitter is CSC228. I will say that is my own account. It's more political than anything else, so don't follow me there. Probably LinkedIn is probably better. C Chang at ucinnovation.com, or through Brent.
Love it. Shoot me a text if you want to meet Carolyn. We'll make it happen. You are a great friend to many, and you always have such positive vibes and enthusiasm for this sector that changes lives, and it changed yours, and it's changed mine. And yeah. I know that's why the UC Innovation team does what you all do, and it's why we do what we do. And I look forward to continued friendship, collaborations, hugs, after our conference, hang sessions, you name it, all the above. It's great to see you, Carolyn. Thanks for sharing with our audience. Okay.
Will do.
All right. Brent signing off from Four Oaks, North Carolina.
Carolina.
Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Bye.